The law of proximity. Everything is ruled by lightning. Heraclitus. See this mosquito? It's an incredible device with its tiny captors that can detect blood-carrying vessels. It makes an incision in the skin with a microscopic saw and sucks the blood with remarkable precision. If we were to build a machine of this kind, we could take blood and analyze it without you even feeling the sting. Soon we will make micro-robots that will take off on a mission to explore the human organism. So says the Vice President of Toyota Motor Corp's Research Laboratory. And that is a promise. In the near future, the human body will become the training ground for micro-machines that will travel through it in all directions and do so, they say, without causing any pain. So here then are the latest prostheses. The new automatons, these animates that will colonize our organism, just as we ourselves have colonized and controlled the expanse of the Earth's body. Today, when 99% of all microelectronic machines produced are captors or sensors, and when motor vehicles, smart cars, are already equipped with over 50 microprocessor scanners of all kinds to control pressure, vibration, or shock, smart pills are being concocted for the human organism that are capable of transmitting information long distance concerning nerve function or blood flow. And later on we will have micro-robots capable of circulating in our arteries to treat diseased tissue. Industry has already come up with the necessary microprocessors and sensors. All we have to do now is add the arms and legs, explains Professor Fujita of Tokyo University. Having reached this stage in the development of the post-industrial machine, the question of the miniaturization of components becomes crucial in analyzing the topology of technology. In fact, while the history of technology has accustomed us to weighing up the growing importance of industrial machinery, both in terms of volume and geography, with the proliferation of railways, cables, high-tension lines, or networks of highways, we are suddenly now seeing the reverse process. Little by little, technological reductionism is spreading to all branches of communications and telecommunications. The law of mechanical proximity that once allowed us to carve up and develop the human environment, the exogenous environment of the species, is giving way to a law of electromagnetic proximity about which we really know nothing and understand even less. And soon, as more or less passive witnesses, we shall see the imminent invasion of our bodies, the control of an endogenous environment, that of our entrails and viscera, thanks to the interactive feats of a biotechnological miniaturization that will finish off the job of those flourishing large-scale mass communication tools that already govern our society. So, the genealogy of technology will have taken us slowly from control of the geophysical environment, thanks to the development of the hydraulic networks and engineering involved in the cadastral organization of the world, to control of the physical environment with mechanics and the physical chemistry of the energies fueling the vectors of transport and communication, before ending today in control of the microphysical environment, not only of the climate, but of human physiology, the traditional pharmacopoeia making way for the interactive capabilities of transmission tools that human beings may soon ingest, indeed digest. We are effectively seeing the beginnings of a third revolution, following the transport revolution of the 19th century, which saw the flourishing of the railway system, followed by the automobile and aviation. We have, in the 20th century, seen a second revolution, the transmission revolution, as a result of the implementation of the properties of instantaneous propagation of electromagnetic radiation in the form of radio and video. Behind closed laboratory doors, the transplantation revolution is now secretly gearing up, not only with the grafting of livers, kidneys, hearts, and lungs, but with the implantation of new kinds of stimulators, much more effective than the pacemaker, and the imminent grafting of micromotors capable of overcoming the defective functioning of this or that natural organ, and so improving on the vital performance of this or that physiological system belonging to a person in perfect health, thanks to scanners that can be accessed instantly at a distance. Here, once again, the precise question of the topology of technologies is posed. I mean that mutation in the celebrated law of proximity, or, if you prefer, the law of least effort or least action. To reduce, to eliminate the range of action to the point of introducing a machine, a tool of instantaneous communication, into the human body's very guts, poses awesome questions about the new technological environment, the post-industrial technosphere. Indeed, acting at a distance renders problematic the very nature of the interval that makes up this distance, an interval of the space type, negative sign, for the geometric development and control of the geophysical environment, an interval of the time type, positive sign, for control of the physical environment and the invention of communication tools, and lastly, an interval of the light type, neutral sign, the third and ultimate interface, for instantaneous control of the microphysical environment, thanks to the new tools of telecommunications. Before returning to the need to redefine the law of proximity, because of the very instantaneity of interactive technologies, we might observe that if control of prior geophysical and physical environments was rigorously contemporaneous with the absolute nature of space and time in Newton's era, control of the microphysical environment is contemporaneous with the absolute nature of the speed of light in Einstein's. Today, if technology's remote action winds up transplanting information sources into the very heart of the living being, this is because the law of electromagnetic proximity has once and for all outstripped the law of mechanical proximity, teleaction and future prevailing over immediate action. Let us turn now to the evolution of transport and communication tools in their relation to the status of the body of the passerby, the passenger, in anticipation of the future interactive implant recipient. To begin with, by breeding and domesticating a drought animal that could pull a harness or carry a useful load, man aligned himself with the mule, the ox, or the horse, which he then guided, steered, and finally rode, after managing to hop up on a chariot following the invention of the wheel. He was also to hit on the idea of yoking the animal vehicle, his steed. He mounts the horse, which then becomes a mount, and shortly afterwards an animal with a saddle, and not just a simple beast of burden anymore. This gave rise to the conquest of immense territories and to gradual control of humanity's geographic environment. Finally, after the sailing ship, responsible for conquest of the seas and oceans, he was to invent the motor vehicle, a vehicle no longer metabolic but technical, the locomotive with its carriages, the car, the plane, which he would move into permanently, so that inside driving under cover, from that moment won out over the old mount. With the revolution in broadcasting hot on the heels of the transport revolution, telecommunication equipment was to adapt to the body of the individual, which was then fitted out with communication prostheses, the mobile phone, Walkman, portable computer or TV, electrodes, to say nothing of the data glove or data suit, in anticipation of the future transplantation revolution and the ingurgitation of micromachines, the technological fueling of the living body, in which the ingredients or substances ingested will not just be foodstuffs produced by the physical chemistry of nutrients, known as restoratives, but will include substances produced by microprocessors, by more or less biodegradable stimulant implants, microbe machines, cellular automata, allegedly able to improve certain of our faculties. So in the same way as the new materials are enriched from within their outer layers by sundry networks, optical fibers, fiber optic cables, or integrated circuit microprocessors made of substances either cast or molded, woven or thermoformed, the intimate space of the innards of the human body is preparing to receive its complement of intra-organic micromachinery, and this micromachinery will be capable of acting, not only in the manner of Dr. Delgado's famous electrodes, but this time along remote control lines, with enough zapping of vital functions, as with alcohol or narcotics, to wake the dead. A biotechnical, and not merely biochemical straitjacket, whereby the psychophysiology of an individual's behavior would be permanently relayed to instantaneous information capabilities, her body wired with electronic pathways that would extend the nervous system, Things have already gone so far that certain researchers are proposing to build completely new equipment, molecule by molecule, nanomachines being merely, in their view, the first stage in an evolution that will in future take them from simple cells to more complex organisms. This endogenous mechanization will then sweep aside the exogenous mechanization that allows us to control humanity's geophysical environment. But let's get back to this latest law of proximity and its relationship to the principle of least action. If the recent evolution of post-industrial machinery is anything to go by, less is more, not only in terms of the volume or the physical cumbersomeness of the object, but equally in terms of the material and the internal construction of the microscopic motor. The burning question is, if less is more, to what extent? To the point where it reaches the virtual, where it becomes this image, this virtual reality that is ultimately more decisive than the thing which it is merely the image of. Since the current miniaturization entails a corollary dematerialization of the appliance, we need to ask ourselves if there is a limit, quantum or otherwise, to the process of reduction and visualization of the contemporary technological object. Present, or more precisely, telepresent man, no longer actually inhabits the energy of any machinery whatsoever. It is energy that instantaneously inhabits and governs him, whether he likes it or not. A radical reversal of the principle of least action that had till now shaped social history. Besides, it is clear what the project of the coming transplant revolution is. It is to miniaturize the world, having reduced and miniaturized its components, the technological objects the world has contained ever since industry first took off. So what about the future of architecture, of that domestic space where daily proximity collected as much in the interval of residential rooms as in the terracing of the apartment block? If the possibility of acting instantaneously without having to move about physically, to open the blinds, switch on the light, or adjust the heating, has partly removed the practical value of space and time intervals to the sole benefit of the speed interval of remote control, thanks to the feats of the live transmission revolution, what will happen when this capacity for action, or rather for instantaneous interaction, with the biotechnological transplant revolution, migrates from the thickness of the walls or floors of the wired apartment and settles not on, but inside, the body of the inhabitants, introducing itself, lodging itself in their bodies, in the closed circuits of their vital systems. Bear in mind once again the peculiar nature of this law of least action, where there is a choice between a lift or an escalator and a simple staircase to reach upper floors. No one takes the stairs. Similarly, where a metro corridor is too long and there is a moving walkway, a travelator, at the user's disposal, no one traipses along the corridor. The same goes for telecommunications. It is better to send an electric impulse than to carry a sheet of paper, but carrying a letter, sending mail, is better than sending a messenger. This rule extends as far as the notions, crucial in architecture, of inside and outside, which are gradually losing their importance. With the immateriality of electromagnetic radiation, even the difference between high and low is being eroded, despite the fact that this difference is a major part of putting buildings up. In a recent interview, the architect Kazuo Shinohara claimed, "The future city is the pleasure of the interval." But what interval are we talking about here, with a decline in time distances and so in the requirements of physical movement? With a supremacy of the interval of absolute speed, third interval of the neutral sign light type, of electronic waves that enable interactivity to occur, and so the sudden relativization of the intervals of space, negative sign, and time, positive sign, all the conceptual bases of architectronics are literally collapsing, right up to the natural lighting provided by the sun, which we can now conduct via sensors and optical fibers from the roof garden of the apartment block into the inside of the apartment, the fibrous space of the cable taking over from the opening of windows in the facade of the home. So what can we say about the effect of the impending introduction of such teletechnologies, such transplant procedures into man's inner body, as well as over the arrangement of his domestic environment? Already with the transport revolution of the 19th century, movement from one place to another had obviously undergone a mutation, since departure and arrival at a destination were peculiarly privileged to the detriment of the journey, properly so called. Note in this connection the passivity, the somnolence of bullet train passengers in the screening of films on long-haul planes. With the instantaneous transmission revolution, it is now departure that gets wiped out and arrival that gets promoted. The generalized arrival of data, from television to telecommuting, to the teleaction made possible by remote control of the domestic systems of the smart house. Wired to control the environment without actually moving a limb, a teleoperator of their own surroundings, deprived of those exotic prostheses with which the neighborhood of the city was once rigged out. The inhabitant of the teletopical metacity can no longer clearly distinguish here from elsewhere, private from public. The insecurity of their territorial hold extends from the space of their own world to the space of their own body. Once this happens, adoption of a sedentary life tends to become final, absolute, since the functions traditionally distributed within the real space of the town are now exclusively taken over by the real time of the wiring of the human body. The key notions of radio, video, digital, signal input and output have overtaken those usually associated with the movement of people or objects traditionally distributed throughout the extension of space. The short-circuiting of intention and the will to act then replaces acting by means of gestures and body movements. Contrary to traditional mechanical proximity, the new electromagnetic proximity is not so much spatial as temporal. The real time of immediacy, live coverage, dominates the real space of the building, requiring the builder completely to overhaul his working notions and necessitating a perspective in which time, interactivity's duration, or more precisely its lack of duration, prevails over the geometric space of the quattrocento. The old conceptions of architecture, based on the absolute nature of the intervals of space and time of volumetric analysis, ceases to be relevant. After Newton, the relativization of these notions opens onto the absolutism of the speed of light and the emergence of a last type of interval of neutral sign that will in turn demand a new perspective, the accelerated perspective of real time, as well as the invention of new theories of architecture and urbanism. And so, the law of electromagnetic proximity creates compelling necessities that not only concern ethics or the politics of energy, but also aesthetics and our vision of the world. The sudden bewildering babble clamor of the world city, the untimely mix of the global and the local, of which the Gulf War was an early warning sign, are ringing in the new revolution, the biotechnological transplant revolution, the rigging out of our animal bodies with the same road maintenance networks and highways that have until now rigged out the territorial body of urban society. The last territory, human physiology, thus becomes the privileged site of experimentation for the micro-machines of communications. Drugs, anabolic steroids, and dope appearing as clinical symptoms of this coming sensory permutation. I do not know if, as Shinohara goes on to claim, the city of the future will express the beauty of confusion. I am, on the other hand, quite convinced that it will in the near future illustrate the tragedy of the fusion of the biological and the technological.